Springfield's Talk 104.1 and good Tuesday morning, streaming live KSGF.com. The big local news happening late afternoon into the overnight hours, this manhunt that ended up in the with the death of two law enforcement officials from the area and then the killer himself. And I want to thank Carissa Codell. I know over there I was communicating with her about just getting the latest information, and she was, trying to make sure. About an hour ago, virtually every outlet had a different level of reporting as to how many people had been shot, how many people had been killed, whether or not. Fox News National still this morning is reporting that the shooter was captured and in captivity when he, too, is dead. And so a lot of conflicting reports, as oftentimes does occur when you have this sort of quickly developing story. And Carissa Codell over there at Color 10 was, just working to make sure they had all the information. I know she's got a lot on her hands, so updating our news, definitely wanted to shout out an appreciation to her on that. And she will have updated version of it coming up here in a moment, but I did want to share with you some of the details. And I grabbed this from Springfield Daily Citizen because in terms of just something I had to print off, they seem to have, as of just 10 minutes ago, the most updated information. And Harrison Keegan, writing for the Daily Citizen, that Sheriff Brad Cole said a Christian County deputy was fatally shot during a traffic stop Monday, February 23rd, and another Christian County deputy was shot and killed by the suspect hours later during the manhunt in rural Stone County. Cole said a third Christian County deputy and a Webster County deputy were also shot while trying to apprehend the suspect. He said their injuries are not believed to be life-threatening. The suspect, 45-year-old Richard Dean Bird, was killed in a shootout with law enforcement. Cole said, quote, "It's been a long night, or it's been a long day. It's been a trying day, and the upcoming days are going to be harder than today was. We do what we have to do to make sure our citizens are safe, and that is what we did today. We took a bad guy off the streets and sent him where he needed to be." Cole praised the fallen deputies for their courage and commitment to protecting the residents of Christian County. Authorities say the event began around 3:50 yesterday afternoon when Bird shot and killed Christian County Deputy Gabrielle Ramirez during the traffic stop near Highway 160 in the Highlandville area. Bird fled the scene, prompting the massive search. The Missouri State Highway Patrol issued a blue alert asking for the public's help finding Bird's white pickup truck. Cole said Stone County deputies found the truck abandoned not far from the roundabout where Highway 160 meets Highway 248 near Reed Spring. Authorities set up a perimeter, and Cole said a Highway Patrol helicopter picked up a heat signature in the woods that law enforcement believed might be the suspect. As law enforcement officers approached, Cole said Bird immediately opened fire on them, killing a deputy and injuring two others. Cole said law enforcement officers from throughout the region descended on the area, and Bird continued to shoot at officers who returned fire and killed him. Cole said the response included deputies from throughout southwest Missouri as well as federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI, ATF, and U.S. Marshal's Office. Quote, "About every law enforcement agency that you can imagine from around the area responded to assist. Collaborative efforts is what brought the ending that we had tonight." And again, that is the write-up from Harrison Keegan in the Springfield Daily Citizen. Now, I have not seen any reports as to who this individual is beyond the obvious from the information that we have yesterday in the engagement with local law enforcement. If this was somebody that was sought after, what prompted him to shoot the deputy and then to flee and then, of course, end up in firefight into the overnight hours in which another deputy lost his life and others were shot. And I'm sure that information is going to be released as it is known and confirmed. And, of course, we'll make sure to have that for you. So I wanted to get you the latest update on that. Like I said, Carissa Codell at the top of the hour, and she's going to just sort of recap the basics of it for you here. And any new developments, they will make sure to update that for us so that you have that as well throughout the day. We'll have weather in a moment. Right now, that latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well with a high near 62. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 62.
Hardscapes and outdoor, all of your landscaping needs, your hardscaping needs, your outdoor lighting needs. You want outdoor party area. You want an outdoor kitchen to be able to essentially live outdoors while still being indoors. I look at the yard, my yard, in a different way than I did once upon a time. And you know, if you ever going through Zillow and you just see lots for sale and you realize how much that cost and the square footage of just the piece of land itself, even if it's just a small little yard that's going to be part of a neighborhood, and then how we don't really utilize it. We don't capitalize off it. It's like having, you know, a room in your home that you just don't ever use. People come take a tour of your home and like, why is this room empty? We just decided not to use it. Doesn't make much sense. But we do that with our yards so often, and you can change that. Make it into an addition to your home with an outdoor living space. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. You can find them hunterhardscapes.com, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. The shooting that took place, in which ultimately there were 2 local deputies that were killed. The shooter was killed. A couple of other deputies were shot as well. And, you know, the first shooting, though, we're still going to learn information, like what Was this individual pulled over? For what was he pulled over? Was this, someone that was being sought, or was this just a standard, normal, somebody got pulled over for speeding or rolling through a stop sign, or perhaps expired license plate, but was also perhaps wanted and decided to shoot the officer. What a lot of people don't realize is that this is one of the most dangerous times for law enforcement, is when they approach a vehicle. And it's because, if you've ever gotten pulled over, as I have, and you know you're not dangerous, you know that the officer doesn't have to worry about you taking his or her life, but that officer has no idea. Zero. And while oftentimes when law enforcement pulls someone over, they may know that it is somebody that they're on the lookout for. It is somebody, perhaps they've run the plates, that has some sort of criminal history. But so often that they have no clue from someone like you to someone like this. No idea. Imagine that every time you do a component of your job, knowing that it could be just interaction with the normal everyday person, or before you even know it, they try to kill you. I know that the circumstances, whatever they are, surrounding this particular incident that took place beginning yesterday, and what we've all seen in Minneapolis with Border Patrol and with ICE are different scenarios. But the overall circumstances are the same, and that is, you are talking about people in law enforcement who are interacting with individuals that, as benign as the scenario may seem at any given moment, if they do not just act absolutely immediately at certain times, they can lose their lives. Now, other times, whether it is just approaching a vehicle, or somebody is wrestling with you, somebody is revving their engine and they hit the gas while you're standing in front of their vehicle. And what I try and appreciate when a situation tragically turns out the way that it did, as it did yesterday, is how fast these things can happen. And how in other circumstances, like, all law enforcement is aware of this. And while it doesn't mean that every time an officer utilizes deadly force, it was a wise decision, I try and really appreciate the recognition that in any one of those situations, that people love to sit back and slow down the tape and go frame by frame, and, well, they should have done this, and, well, they could have done that. How quickly it can happen. Now, again, we don't know the circumstances, the detailed circumstances. Did the deputy have the ability to even grab his firearm? Did he see it coming? What? We don't know. But it's perhaps a teaching moment, if you will, for a lot of us, when we're so quick to judge after watching footage, slowed down and frame by frame, and, well, they could have done this and they could have done that. And when you see the realities of how quickly these things can happen and how quickly a member of law enforcement can lose their lives, it's a time to understand that they don't have the benefit of slowing down a tape, of doing it backwards and forwards, and then finding another tape from another angle to watch that, and how unfair it is. or people to judge them and their actions in the moment based off of the privilege we have of watching different videotapes at different speeds and hearing different experts give their analysis of what could and shouldn't have happened. And like I said, that doesn't mean that every scenario is a scenario in which law enforcement, when they've used deadly force, that it's a blank check to use it anytime and anytime you want. But this is also why you don't fight with law enforcement. This is why you don't do things when you engage with law enforcement that might demonstrate you're a potential threat, because everyone is a threat. Everyone. They have to approach the situation that way. This could have played out in a scenario in which the officer was able to recognize that there was a potential threat, and the officer was the first one to fire off a shot. And if that had happened, there's a very good chance that there would be people criticizing him for it. There's a very good chance that people would have said, well, why didn't he try to grab him and stop him from getting the gun? Why didn't he shoot him in the arm? Why didn't he do this? He should have done that. Why didn't he jump out of the way? And it's the situations that happen in which a member of law enforcement that just gets up and goes to work, just moments before having conversations with friends or family members, and just quicker than one can imagine, something like this happens, and it's just a moment that can be of great value for us as spectators and commentators in the public forum of social media that love to judge these people when they use deadly force and have the benefit that they don't have. And moments like this, which are horrific and tragic and completely unnecessary, can be moments that I think we learn from. And maybe take the opportunity to appreciate that when somebody in law enforcement is wrestling someone to the ground and there are firearms involved, or someone in law enforcement hears an engine revving and then the vehicle lunges towards them, and they successfully use deadly force, we also don't have the benefit of knowing what would have happened had they not have done it. Would they have lost their lives? And it's very, very easy to sit back and pretend as if we know for certain that they would have not been harmed in any way, shape, or form if they had just acted more reasonably, if they had just jumped out of the way, or he should have known that that person no longer had a firearm, even though someone yelled gun. He should have, all of these should haves. And I think sometimes we go really from unfair to straight up wrong when we judge people in law enforcement so unfairly. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447-KSGF. Coming up, I want to play some audio yesterday. Greatly ignored by the media, Donald Trump honored angel families. One of the mothers specifically of Laken Riley, who is the nursing student that just went for a jog one day, and because of an illegal that had been arrested before and sanctuary city policies released back into our neighborhoods, she lost her life brutally. And of course, hardly any coverage from mainstream media honoring these people, bringing into focus the unnecessary tragedies that so many families have suffered in this country because of the refusal of people in government to enforce our immigration laws. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. couple of your text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. Hey, Nick, the scenario with law enforcement and the public are similar to healthcare in that healthcare professionals have to use universal precautions because they do not know who might have a communicable disease. The police officer does not know who might be dangerous or a threat to their life. Prayers for the families. And this is true. That comparison makes sense. And these are, any job, virtually any job that you do, people who don't do it, there are certain aspects of it they don't understand. And nor would they. The problem we have increasingly in our society is that we like to assume we do know. And that's about everything. You see it all the time with people on social media that will be making judgments, particularly when it comes to certain scenarios or industries in which they have no knowledge. And it's fine not to know. But we don't tend to oftentimes respect our ignorance, our own ignorance in certain capacities, and so we'll just weigh in anyway and start criticizing people for carrying out their job whenever we don't know about it. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't obvious things. If you go to a restaurant and somebody at the restaurant spits in your food that works there and you've never worked in a restaurant, you still know that that's not something you're supposed to do. There's certain clear and obvious scenarios in which there are definite no-nos versus, well, you just don't know how the industry works. But law enforcement is just one of these for a number of different reasons. People love to judge, not really fully comprehending and understanding what goes into the job. I'm almost 70 years old is another text. I have never been instructed on what to do and not to do during a traffic stop. Only recently I found out that at night it's good to turn on interior lights to help the officer to see inside of the vehicle. And, a lot of this, if you're 70 today, when you were 40, much of this probably was not necessarily top of mind or as needed as it is today. But with just the increased amount of violent people and mentally violent and unstable people in our society, and let's be honest, there is this undercurrent many have created of anti-law enforcement and claiming that they're systemically racist and that they're just out trying to murder people. And, you combine all of that, and times are different than they were once upon a time. I'm very aware when I get pulled over, and it's been a very long time, but particularly at night. I turn those interiors on. I make sure my hands can be seen. I don't make any sudden movements because, I just don't want to do anything that could potentially put my life in danger. But at the same time, I don't want to create unnecessary fear for somebody who is trying to honestly do their job and make it as easy on them as possible, particularly if they have the, legal ability to give me a ticket or something. I like to be as engaging and nice as possible when I'm interacting with that person. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well with a high near 62. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And for Thursday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 62.
Pinnaker Honda, I've been telling you about all of the great deals that they have, particularly the Max Your Refund promotion that they're doing, and 1.49% available on select certified pre-owned vehicles until March 2nd. But I wanted to read to you a couple of reviews because that, let's be honest, is one of the big sticking points with a lot of people is the experience purchasing a vehicle, and oftentimes it's not considered to be that fun, that pleasant. Nikki posted, everyone was so nice and helpful. We didn't see hope of being able to even get a car given our situation, but Jennifer got us in. We found the perfect car, and we were approved and driving off the lot the next day. They're willing to work with you as much as they possibly can, would definitely recommend, and will definitely be going back. Roberta put personal service still exists at Pinnaker Honda. Kathy Jones, Justin Cartwright answered my questions, helped me with my new vehicle, making sure I was comfortable with my choice and confident in my new ride. Great folks to work with. Thanks. And so whether it is just, great deals from financing to rebates to vehicles on the lot, pre-owned, brand new, or the service you get with the Pinnaker family. Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Now, before I move on, I want to play audio from the White House yesterday. The mother of Laken Riley speaking as Trump announced National Angel Family Day. And a number of you texting in regarding the shooting and this individual that shot the deputies and would himself be shot in an exchange of fire in the woods later in the evening, and that, just numerous reports, and that he was released earlier in the day and so forth. And like I mentioned, there's a number of different reports, and as the day goes on, there will be additional information that is put out there that we will know. Clearly, it's still very early as this whole thing just kicked off yesterday, mid to late afternoon, and then going well into the evening with so many different jurisdictions involved, from local up to federal. And that, of course, is just going to result in a lot of information that slowly but surely comes out. Obviously, families of those who shot, particularly in law enforcement, get notified. And there are just some steps there before they can get all of the relevant information released. And they want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible as well. So that is something that, as the day goes on, I'm sure we will learn more information. Trump honored angel families at a White House remembrance ceremony yesterday. And as you can imagine, this is something that, and it's hard to imagine, and we shouldn't have to imagine, that some of the major media outlets didn't bother even covering this. How dark do you have to be? Your politics aside. These are people you look at, and I'm not saying that, let's say Savannah Guthrie, just all of the attention and the prayers and the coverage because of her missing mom. And I'm not saying that isn't deserved, and that, that somehow her agony and pain that her family's experiencing is not worthy of attention. But how is it in the media that you recognize the humanity of that, but whenever you have a girl that is raped and tortured for hours by people in this country illegally, you don't want anyone paying attention to it because it might harm your political narrative regarding illegal immigration? The number of people in our country that would not be dead today, the number of families that would not be grieving their loved ones today if our immigration laws were enforced. And the darkness of people on the political left on this, their response is usually, well, people get killed by those who are in the country legally too. Okay. The, I mean, I'm not even really sure how to respond to that. So that means that we don't care. Then the instances in which we can prevent people from being murdered or raped or sold into sex trafficking, we just sort of say, oh, well, because Americans murder people too. That's really your perspective on that? That is not a normal perspective. That is not a humane perspective. President Trump, after recognizing the families yesterday, invited Laken Riley's mom. Now, Laken Riley was the nursing student who just went for a jog one day, and a person who is in this country illegally and had been caught committing other crimes and then released because of sanctuary city status. Instead of being deported, she horrifically lost her life. And her mother was invited to step up to the podium and say a few words from the White House yesterday.
Well, this is unexpected, but I think that a lot of people feel like that President Trump is maybe different than the version I've gotten to know. And I just can't thank you enough. You have said from the beginning, literally the day after this happened, that you would not forget about Laken. You weren't president at that time, and you have not forgotten. You have fought a fight that most people would not want to have to fight. Most people wouldn't. They would just say it's just easier not to do this. And President Trump you are doing a thankless job that most people just wouldn't do. And I just can't thank you enough. There are just not enough words to say. Because if you've lived the nightmare that we have lived, you understand the importance of the job that he's doing and securing our nation and fighting for our families. Because this could be any family. This happened to my family. This could be any one of your families. And Laken was the most responsible, hardworking, kind, selfless, beautiful Christian. And she wasn't somebody that put herself in bad positions. She didn't make bad choices. She was just a good girl. And she just wanted to go for a run that morning after she'd gotten up at 4 o'clock the morning before to decorate her roommate's door for her birthday. And she did everything for everyone else. She expected nothing in return. She just wanted to be a good friend and a good sister and a good daughter and a hardworking nurse. She was working so hard for. And I'm beyond blessed and thankful that you're honoring not just Laken, because she's one in a ton of people that have suffered at the hands of illegal immigrants. She's not the only one. And so thank you for honoring all of them, not just Laken. And we're just beyond grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Also at that event, that again yesterday from the White House, and this was the National Angel Family Day proclamation. Angel families being those families who lost loved ones unnecessarily because of the refusal to enforce immigration laws by some politicians and sanctuary cities. And this is what's really important to understand. This is what sanctuary cities are, but this is what these are the results of sanctuary cities. A sanctuary city is not a safe haven for otherwise law-abiding citizens. Sanctuary city status is specifically for the lawbreakers. You hear people on the left and they say, well, we're fine with deporting the actual criminals. Then you should not support sanctuary cities. Because a sanctuary city is a city that when they have somebody in custody that has committed a crime, sexual assault, for example, or child abuse, and they are also in the country illegally, they are issued a detainer by the Fed saying, hey, instead of putting that person out on parole or once they serve their time, releasing them back out in the community, let us know, since they're here illegally and they've already committed a violent crime, we would like to deport them. Sanctuary city status says we're not going to do that. Instead, we are going to release them back into the community. That is sanctuary city. So if you support sanctuary cities and you support the concept of sanctuary cities, you do support specifically the violent criminals who are in this country illegally. That's who you're supporting. People like the individual who murdered Laken Riley. At the same event, a former New York Police Department officer revealed that he personally arrested Laken Riley's convicted killer, Jose Ibarra, when he worked for the department months before her killing, but he was released. The former New York law enforcement officer who now works as a police officer in Palm Beach, Florida, made the comments during the White House event for families whose loved ones were victims of violent crimes by illegal immigrants. Quote, I personally, he said, arrested Jose Ibarra for endangering the welfare of a child. A few months later, I saw his face again in the news after he viciously murdered Laken Riley. I did my job. I put him in custody. The system failed. No detainer, no accountability, no deportation. An innocent American life was taken. If you enter our country illegally, there will be consequences under this administration. So that is the result of a sanctuary city. Even though he went to jail for endangering the life of a child, that jurisdiction refused to turn him over for deportation and instead released him into the community, and Laken Riley was murdered months later because of it. I don't know how any rational or caring human being can support these policies. And the fact that this has become political. Once upon a time, the Democrat Party had a presidential candidate by the name of Michael Dukakis, who was the governor of, I think, Massachusetts or Maine, East Coast. And he had, under his watch as governor, there was a program that allowed prisoners to, I think it was get out on the weekends or early parole. It was something that was a soft on criminal approach. And a criminal, while on that program, murdered someone. That was largely seen as, at the very least, helping sink his presidential possibilities. The ad campaign during the presidential election ran around the fact that a policy that was in place during his term as governor resulted in a criminal being out on the streets when he otherwise would not have been and killing someone. That was now, whether he would have actually won had that not been the case or not, but that was central to the campaign because even Democrats found that appalling. That was one instance. You have this country filled with people who have lost loved ones because of sanctuary city policies across this country. If not hundreds, thousands. And you don't have to be a sanctuary city to have victims. We've had it here in Springfield. Several years ago, there was the killing of some gal by an individual who was in Springfield, had previously been arrested for some crime. I think it was in New Jersey. It was a sanctuary city. He was in the country illegally, and because it was a sanctuary city, he was not turned over to ICE. He ended up in Springfield, and someone lost their life because of it. So you don't have to be in a sanctuary city to be the victim of sanctuary city status policies. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. All right, State of the Union is taking place tonight, and I think as expected, there's going to be some touting of the improvements to the economy, and I mean, everyone's got their perspective on this. Things are turning around, and they are getting better, but at the same time, it just hasn't been felt in the meaningful way that it needs to be felt. And let me tell you what I equate this to. I equate this to anyone who has ever found themselves in, by their own doing, financial hardship, and then, went the Dave Ramsey approach and really got yourself out of it. And, even when you're halfway through it, you're not out of it yet. You are coming up with a plan that changes things. You make some changes, and the whole goal is to get out of debt, to get back to where you can breathe again financially, and you don't owe. You're not making payments on credit cards and so forth. And the process of getting there isn't easy, and it isn't fun. You don't simply on day one make the changes and then suddenly everything is wonderful and fine. And that's the same way with the economy, that there's nothing that can be done with the damage that was done with the previous administration in particular. There's no light switch that can be flipped to suddenly get it back to where it was before. That is a long, hard journey. And I think that really needs to be something that people need to understand. Now, like everyone else under the sun, I could go on about, well, you need to say this instead of that and so forth. I'm not going to spend time doing that. I suspect that there's going to be a lot of that, particularly tomorrow after the State of the Union address, and what resonated, what didn't resonate, and it's all going to be surrounding the economy. But there is this, and I think Trump understands this because Trump understands how businesses work. He understands how the economy works, and so I think it's part of the reason he hasn't really fretted too much over trying to reassure everyone, because in his mind, by time it really comes to people making decisions as to who's in charge again, they will start feeling it because that's the world that he lives in. He understands that these things do take time, but that's not the average person. The average American doesn't necessarily understand that. And, when you do campaign on, we're going to turn things around, people perceive that as, and that's fair. They perceive it as, oh, okay, once you get elected, then it's all going to turn around. Well, the way that the country operates turns around, but the results of it takes time. And if people understand that I believe will go a long way, because it isn't just recognizing that the results of the changes are still yet to come in a real meaningful long-term way. But reverting back to the way things were done before we're going to lose all that ground and then be potentially even worse off. Because the people who are saying they want to be in charge in order to make things better, they want to, and they fully acknowledge this, just do what they did before to make it so bad. Democrats, meantime, are going to have alleged victims of Epstein. I mean, it's just... And then individuals allegedly detained by ICE during protests. So, just being that beacon of light and hope for the American people. Democrats are, because they have nothing to offer that is positive, and their version and vision of America is bleak and horrible and bad. They're going to gaslight by having alleged victims of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell there. And then, which is just sick. It's sick because we know that Democrats spent years covering this stuff up. The Biden administration would not release anything. Donald Trump, according to the files, well, he's in the Epstein files. Yeah, among others, back in 2006, telling law enforcement that not only did they need to nail Epstein, but Ghislaine Maxwell, who wasn't even on the radar at the time. He's been this whistleblower all along. And for them to use victims of sexual abuse in such a depraved way is a demonstration of just how disgusting culturally the Democrat Party is. And this, unfortunately, should come as no surprise, but it is what will be on display during the State of the Union this evening. Springfield's Talk 104.1, hour number 2. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live KSGF.com. We're also on YouTube. You can watch us in studio if you'd like to do so. Just look up Springfield's Talk 104.1. There's a gal in Michigan who is running for Congress. And she's a Democrat, and she posted a video explaining it's a video to an ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago. And the video is to him, but she posted it publicly and letting him know that she has become really successful out of spite, like to get at him, which includes her running for Congress. Now, I know everyone has their own particular reasons for doing anything in life. And when it comes to people who run for Congress, you'd like to think that they're in it for, I don't know, positive reasons, whether they're constitutional or even, I want to help my community. But when you're a woman and you're like out there openly saying I'm doing it just to get back at my ex-boyfriend. Her name is Shelby Campbell. And she posted this video on TikTok on February 6th. And let's see here. All right, here's the her video message again. It's out, she posted it for everyone to see, but it was a message specifically to an ex-boyfriend.
This is for Parker Thomas Miller, Shelby Campbell, running for Michigan's 13th Congressional District. 10 years ago today, you blocked me and broke up with me after I spent almost 10 years with you. And I'm still bitter about it, but I'm so thankful because without you, I have done so much. The only aspiration I had when I was with you at that age was to just get to Texas and save you from doing drugs. And then I was going to maybe be a hairstylist. But now, baby, I'm running for Congress. I finished more than half of law school because you told me I could never go to college. So, thank you. Everything I do is out of spite. But instead of being an evil, spiteful bitch, I just level up on you hoes.
She's also the same one who was posting videos after Charlie Kirk was politically assassinated.
Oh, this is that same...
Yes, like the demonic laughing and saying, I am so glad that he was killed. We need to get more. Yeah, same gal.
You think she's got a bit of a bitterness problem?
I was going to say, I think she might just have a little bit of a problem. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit of a man problem here. And maybe it goes back to... whatever his name, I mean, she said his name in the Philip whatever it was. Maybe it goes back to, because she remembers the 10-year anniversary of when he blocked her on social media.
Yeah.
That is psychotic.
Yeah, no kidding.
There's a good, I don't know I don't know if that's a blue district or not. If it is, I bet she'll win. And this is what's sad, but liberal women, they're mean, they're dark, they're spiteful, they feed off of this stuff, and I could see this almost being like, yeah, we'll show him, letting a man, because to me, everyone sees this differently, but in my mind, you are letting this man control your life 10 years later. You are fully acknowledging that everything that you do is to get back at him. For 10 years of your life, and to not have the awareness that this is not a good look as somebody that is trying to portray yourself, presumably as a strong, independent person, that you, on the 10th anniversary of being blocked by your boyfriend or ex-boyfriend on social media, you first off remember it. What a nut. I didn't realize this was the same one that... who had mocked the Charlie Kirk assassination, but it I guess it makes sense. Now I have another video that I want to play the audio. Actually, where is it? this is just great. So, oh wait, getting these out of control. This is a leftist, okay, who fled to Canada because of genocide fears under Donald Trump, which were clearly founded because we've seen the genocide of the LGBT community play out right before us. Now, I don't know that this is the reason this individual fled, but we hear a lot of talk about LGBTQ genocide, and she talks about her partner, and there are just some stereotypical visuals that lend one to believe that perhaps this is someone that is into the gender pronoun sort of thing. And this is making the rounds because she fled to Canada to get away from the horrific US of A, and she is begging for help from people in Canada because the cost of living and the conditions in Canada are as such, it's making it virtually impossible for her, her partner, her cat, and her dog to survive.
I'm a scholar on the far right who has fled the United States to Canada, and I need help. The situation in Canada is absolutely dire. For Americans who don't know, the housing crisis here is worse than in the United States. I lived in LA for 6 years, and I have not faced rent as bad as here. When my partner, our cat, and our dog fled the United States, we headed north with the goal of being close to where our families are located, which is on the West Coast. So we are now in British Columbia. More specifically, we are in the Sea to Sky Highway in the Greater Vancouver area. We are attempting to find housing in the western side of this region. My partner and I are here on a visitor visa, which is a 6 months possible stay for Americans. But while you're here on a visitor visa, you can't work. So we are currently surviving off of what savings we could get together before we fled the United States. And that's not terribly much. And in Canada, I think it's actually the cost of living crisis is worse here, especially when you are shut out of the healthcare system, when you can't access any of the resources that Canadians have access to. And that's understandable. You know, I'm not a citizen of the country, but it is making the financial situation dire.
Boy, there's a lot here. Now, the fact, good for this person for acknowledging that she was completely ignorant as to what she was getting into. She had no idea how much more difficult it was financially to live in Canada than she was in LA, paying rent in Los Angeles. That's one of the highest, in terms of rent and cost of living areas of the entire country. And so for her to go from LA to Canada and then find herself just shocked at how expensive it is, you would think it'd be a wake-up call to these people. Can you imagine fleeing to another country and not doing one bit of research whatsoever about cost of living? You are going to where you're going to have to get a place to live. This is how impulsive and detached from reality that people on the left are. When we choose a great escape, I spend a lot of time just researching the resort and the restaurants and, is it all, do you have a full 24-hour room service? Is it just partial? These people that, I'm just going to go to Canada, no clue whatsoever what it costs to live there. None. One of her complaints previously is, she told her followers that the way that she was just very concerned about the plight of immigrants in our country under Donald Trump, enforcing the law and everything. Now she's up there in Canada complaining that she doesn't get all of the benefits that citizens do, but acknowledges she understands that because she's not a citizen. Well, that's sort of a contradiction, isn't it? So here in Canada, She completely and fully respects the fact that she doesn't get health care, that she doesn't get any sort of help with housing, that she doesn't get anything because, after all, she's not a citizen. She says, I completely understand that. But here in America, if you have that expectation, you're a racist. I know you try to grapple with determining the contradiction and how does a person like that rationalize such a contradiction, how it is that she can go to another country and fully acknowledge and appreciate and respect their immigration laws while fleeing our country because of a president that got elected that was going to expect the same thing here that they do in Canada in terms of respecting immigration laws. And you just try and like, how does that compute? That's the thing. People on the left don't compute. They don't think. They are anti-intellectual. They are emotionally driven, oftentimes hysterical human beings that find themselves in a worse situation than they were in to begin with because of their own inability to rein in their emotions and just think a little bit. You know, Ellen and Portia de Rossi, they moved back to the States, and Rosie has come back to visit to see if it's safe. It's amazing how these folks, they go to these other places and find out maybe it wasn't so bad in the good old US of A after all.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well with a high near 62. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 62.
Now, here's a headline that's going to come as a shock. You ready?
I'm ready.
Springfield Chamber endorses convention center lodging tax increase.
What?
They were like, you had me at tax increase. That's all. They're like, what's it for? I don't get just a tax increase we supported. Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce endorsing the April 7th ballot measure increasing the city's lodging tax in order to fund the new 125,000 square foot convention center. On the April ballot, Springfield will once again ask voters whether to increase the city's hotel-motel tax paid by those booking hotel rooms and short-term rentals by 3% to fund the new convention and event center in November. The same question failed, with 52.56% of voters opposing the increased tax. Now the city has added a 35-year sunset to the increase and has released more details in the proposal. I'm reading to you from the news leader, FYI. The Chamber Board of Directors voted to endorse the ballot measure, according to a February 19th Chamber news release, citing the convention center's long-term economic impact and alignment with the organization's strategic plan, apparently having some of the highest taxes in the area. In the release, the Chamber echoes claims about potential new visitor spending the new project could bring in while enabling the Queen City to compete for additional events. However, skepticism remains about some of those projections, which include projections extending out 30 years due to the highly competitive nature of the convention industry. Chamber President Matt Morrow said leading regional economic development means embracing generational opportunities that accelerate the success and prosperity of our community and region. The new convention center is being planned at the current Springfield Exposition Center in the adjacent vacant field, with both properties already owned by the city. However, the city is in ongoing property acquisition talks for additional properties surrounding the area. The city is still awaiting the release of $30 million from the state after Governor Kehoe placed the amount on his restricted list. This means it is solely up to the governor if and when the release to release the funds. If released, the city would have until the end of June to spend the state funding and another $30 million in a local match. City Manager David Cameron previously noted the extra $30 million from the state would go towards property acquisition. Since November, Cameron has stated the convention center will keep to the strict $175 million price cap, and no general revenue funds would go towards the project or its upkeep. Consultants recommending the new convention center had noted it would operate at a deficit. Since engaging Populous, a Kansas City-based global architecture firm best known for its work on the Las Vegas sphere, the complete pre-design work, the city has hosted several community meetings to gather input on what the convention center would look like. The goal has been for Populous to provide a rendering of the project in early March before the election. That would be helpful. The final visioning workshop is scheduled for Thursday, February 26th at the Discovery Center at 438 East St. Louis Street from 3 to 6:30 p.m. in a come-and-go style. The event will also be live-streamed on the city's Facebook page. The event will include hands-on workshops, interactive activities, and surveys to help guide the convention center's on- and off-site planning. In March, council members Heather Hardinger and Bruce Abid Yazi, as co-chairs of the city's ballot information committee, will host several coffee talks to answer questions and listening to feedback on the lodging tax increase. Coffee talks will take place on Tuesdays from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. March 10th, Echelon Coffee. The 17th, Classic Rock Coffee on West Sunset. March 24th, Architect Coffee, and then March 31st, once again at Classic Rock Coffee. So you can attend any of those events, should you like to. Yeah, I'm just, Chamber loves those tax increases, so this does not come as a surprise. Now, I love this. I love these stories back to back. So here's the story. We need more of your money. We don't have enough, right? That's the theme. Gotta raise your taxes because we just don't have enough money. Next headline. This is KY3. Springfield City Council holds public hearing on how to spend nearly $1.1 million in carryover funds. Springfield City Council tackling more than a multi-million-dollar question. The council held a public hearing Monday night to discuss the reallocation of nearly $1.1 million that's being carried over thanks to the city department exceeding expected revenue and expenses coming in lower than budgeted in the last fiscal year. It's really a culmination of our council lunch that we had on February 2nd, where we looked at the city's carryover from fiscal 25, just under $1.1 million. There were 4 recommendations that kind of came forth from that meeting, said the city's finance director, David Holtman. On Monday, the city council held its public hearing to discuss divvying the money up among the city clerk, city manager, parks department, and the municipal court building. I think this might be my favorite spend of the extra money, because over here we need more money. Over here we got so much extra, we're like, what do we do with it? Let's have a lunch and figure out how to spend this stuff. If the bill passes, the city clerk will get $230,000 to go towards the April 2026 election for the proposed tax increases. So the money saved, because they, have all this extra money, is going to go to help pay for the election in order to convince you to raise taxes because they don't have enough money. That's what they're going to use the extra money for. So it's government math. Ozarks elder law, oftentimes we think about wills and trusts, and you see it portrayed in movies, and it's the wealthy family sitting around, and you got the, brothers and sisters that hate each other, and they're all upset because somebody's getting more than they do, but you think to yourself, well, we don't have that problem. My family all gets along. And, we got the house, and I'm just going to put it all in their name, and, they'll be able to figure it all out. Sometimes, unfortunately, you take a situation that you think we don't need to worry about it because the family gets along, and you throw in money, and then people, they're mourning, and then sometimes there's hurt feelings, and a lot of times it's in-law people. So like your kids aren't the problem, but you get the kid's spouse in their ear, and they're like, well, you're the one that really has been taking care of your mom for the past year. The other siblings, they don't even live around here. They visit once a month or once every year or so. You should get more than what they're getting. And all of this sort of stuff, you can prevent so much of that by having it all laid out, so there is no sort of conflict, there is no fighting. You have it all laid out legally, and you get all of that nastiness out of there. But you have to do it done. You've got to do it right. It's the $199, download your will and trust online. It's not going to do it for you. Plus, every state is different. In fact, if you've had it done legitimately in another state, you need to have another look at it. Ozarks Elder Law, free consultation. They have 10 area locations for your convenience. And you can just get that set up by going to ozarkselderlaw.com. Or if you'd rather place a phone call, you can go to ozarkselderlaw.com and get their phone number there and call them and set up that appointment. The number is 868-8200, though, if you just want to jot it down, 868-8200. Get that consultation set up. Gavin Newsom has been sparring back and forth with a number of different people, and this is all on the heels of him telling a mostly black audience that he's just like them as black people because he doesn't do very well at tests. He has a low SAT score, and he can't read very well. And that's in his mind how you relate to black people. As you might imagine, some people thought, maybe not the best approach. You may not want to tip your hand that way when it comes to, as somebody that wants to be the Democratic candidate for president of the United States, that's what you think of black people. Well, he's blaming his dyslexia, and this is something that he's done before. This is going to become, I think, a real favorite. Anytime Gavin Newsom says something stupid and he gets criticized, how dare you? I have dyslexia. So the latest back and forth with him on that coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 447 KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well with a high near 62. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 62.
We were talking about a couple of different Springfield-related stories earlier. One, it was a news leader story about the chamber endorsing the tax increase that would go for a new convention center in Springfield. And then another story from KY3, the council meeting on Monday to figure out what to do with this extra $1 million+ that they didn't use. And so those stories back to back, I don't know, they just really say something to me. A couple of your text messages. We could use the money to clean up the trash all over town. Another noting that they could give Republic some of the money with our exorbitant water bills. We're paying nearly $200 a month now for water and sewer. Yeah, people, and I can attest to this as a Springfield resident who, when moved there, I don't know, 10 years ago, water and sewage bill was like $48, and it's well over $100 now, and it continues to go up. They've had to do infrastructure. It's part of an infrastructure deal that I don't know. It's just bad. I mean, with, of course, the cost of all these other things going up too, and it's pretty brutal when you're accustomed to paying a certain amount for a utility, particularly folks on fixed income. I mean, we're lucky enough we can absorb it, but the answer just seems to be, well, we got to build the thing, and so that's just the way it is. But man, it's people in Republic none too happy, and this isn't any new information, but people don't necessarily find themselves in the loop, and then they suddenly realize that they've got this massive increase on their water bill and it's sewage related, and then they go to social media to be told, oh wait, there's another one coming. And it's just Republic. Anytime, particularly with utilities or cost of living issues in Republic, there's any sort of social media posting. It's quite a hornet's nest. I can tell you that much. Gavin Newsom was at an event with black voters in Georgia, and during the event, he was explaining that. And, maybe I should just pull up this audio and actually play it for those of you that have not heard it, if you can give me a moment. Because actually the very first part of what it is that he has to say, oh, you know what? I didn't record it. I streamed it. Anyhow, never you mind. He opens up talking about how I'm not better than you. And that part almost gets overlooked by the fact that he gives the examples of the fact that he got only a 980 on his SAT and that he can't read very well. And obviously that's you're just like things not to say. Or what is it, how to say you're a racist without saying you're a racist? That might be one of those things. But it almost overshadows how he opened it in letting them know that he's not smarter than that. Like, that in and of itself is just a little bit insulting. You got this sleazy, greased back hair white guy talking to a black audience. He's like, hey, everyone, hey, listen, I'm not better than you. Okay, thanks for the heads up there. Hannity, like a lot of others, they were posting, they were sharing his exact comments. It was his audio, his footage. And you had Gavin Newsom respond to Sean Hannity's posting of his own comments by saying, you didn't give a blank. Oh, I got a sneeze coming. Excuse me. You didn't give a blank about the President of the United States of America posting an ape video of President Obama or calling African nations blank holes, but you're going to call me racist for talking about my lifelong struggle with dyslexia? Spare me your blanking outrage. First off, he wasn't talking about his lifelong struggle with dyslexia. That was not being talked about. Nowhere did he say the word dyslexia. Nowhere. This is not what he was talking about. He was trying to relate. And in his mind, I think he thinks that the audience thinks that he thinks he's smarter than them. Now, I know that sounds confusing. But I think in Gavin Newsom, he's up there and he's thinking, yeah, these guys, they all think that I think I'm smarter than they are. They think I'm this arrogant white politician coming in here, flying on my jet. I got the greased back hair and the expensive suit. And so they think that they're like, oh, this guy really thinks he's smart. So in his mind, he wants to push back on what he thinks is their belief of him. And the way that he does that is like, hey, I'm not smarter than you. I also get really bad test scores and can't read. It was not about dyslexia. This was not an symposium on dyslexia. This was not a conversation about dyslexia. This was about him comparing himself to them when it came to smarts. That's why he opened it up with saying, I'm not smarter than you or better than you or whatever. Now, of course, the ape video, we all know that was just more gaslighting. Trump did not take a video and make an ape video of Barack Obama and post it. I'm not going to go back through the whole history of that thing. In terms of Trump calling African nation blank holes, I don't even know if it was specifically African nations, but This was one of the real hang-ups a lot of people had about Trump during his first term, and it was regarding, I think it was funding or something, and he's like, why is it we're spending all this money on these blank hole countries? He may have been talking about one or two in particular. There were real crap holes, like Somalia. And the left went nuts over this. How dare you? How dare you disrespect these countries in that way? Now, these are the same people who argue that we should take unlimited amounts of refugees from these countries because they're so horrible that these people have no choice but to flee for their own safety. You see how full of crap they are? That is the basis for their argument. Countries like Somalia and all of these others, that they're so horrible, the existence is just so deplorable. The only option they have is to come to this country illegally. But then when you point out, yeah, you're right, that is a real blank hole of a country. How dare you? How dare you say that about their country? That's their culture. That's their heritage, you racist. Well, which is it? Hannity responded back to Gavin Newsom with the following. You didn't give a blank about Joe Biden's public spokesperson knowing Joe Biden partnered with the former Klansman Robert Byrd as they tried to prevent integration of public schools. So spare me your blanking phony, feigned outrage. And how about you get homeowners building permits in the Pacific Palisades instead of making a blank out of yourself daily? Just a thought. Now, if you look at these two things, the criticisms, which one really, truly is more on point in terms of like problematic leadership? Gavin Newsom complaining about a video that the White House posted, and the fact that Donald Trump characterized third world countries as blank holes, or Joe Biden partnering with a former Klansman to prevent integration in public schools, which is a thing that happened, and the fact that not a single home has been rebuilt in the Palisades over a year after the fires. Which of those two do you think really have true victims? The governor of Mississippi decided to weigh in, noting to Gavin Newsom, quote, "This seems like a good time to remind you that a black student in Mississippi is 2.5 times more likely to read proficiently by 4th grade than if he or she lived in California. We would be happy to send one of our reading coaches to assist you." Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I will play the audio. Sarah grabbed it. We played it yesterday, but I didn't have it saved. And this is what is, I think a lot of Democrats are like, oh, Gavin, you'd think that this guy would be more ready for prime time. I mean, yes, he isn't necessarily, or he hasn't been a true national figure other than his own attempts to make himself one. But, when you're governor, you don't have quite the spotlight on you as you do if you're president. But I mean, when you go around telling black people, hey, I'm just like you, I can't read, you just You think, come on, let's practice this just a little bit. So this was in Atlanta before that black audience, Gavin Newsom, last weekend.
I'm not, I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
Okay. Yeah, the part that to me is almost maybe even it should be more problematic is like, hey, I'm not better than you. Was somebody claiming that? Why did he feel the need to tell an audience of black people that, hey, I'm not better than you? Was there some confusion over this issue? Was this an audience of people that, for whatever reason, he felt assumed that he was better than them? It just seems like I can't imagine ever feeling so compelled to point that out to a grouping of people that I would feel so secure that they all thought I was better than them that I'd have to say, no, I'm not. But that's Gavin Newsom. Fox News is reporting that Newsom Spox tells reporter F off when asked for records of his dyslexia diagnosis. A chief spokesperson for Democratic California Governor Gavin Newsom lashed out at a reporter Monday asking for medical records documenting his dyslexia diagnosis. Newsom, who's been outspoken about his dyslexia since at least 2004, when he was mayor of San Francisco, facing blowback for comments he made in Atlanta, Georgia over the weekend when he invoked his reading disability. Real Clear Politics correspondent Susan Crabtree revealed the expletive-tinged response she received when she asked for proof of Newsom's dyslexia diagnosis, which the governor previously said he received in 1972 when he was a young child. The screenshot she shared post her request read, quote, "Hey, Susan, thanks for reaching out. Respectfully, F off." It was not edited, however. Fox News Digital asked the spokesperson for Newsom whether he was speaking in a personal capacity or spoke on behalf of Newsom when he approved the response, or spoke to Newsom when he approved the response to Crabtree, to which he replied, "Yes, Susan can F off." When asked whether the sentiment was shared by Newsom himself, Gordon replied, "The governor literally has no idea who Susan is." So it's Gavin Newsom. That is the great hopeful for the Democrat. It's between him and Kamala Harris. Some real bangers there. I really do believe right now, with the two biggest losers in the Democrat Party that project that they are losers on full display, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, and Ocasio-Cortez, and those are the three. Those are the top three consistently. When polled, for the Democrat preference for the presidential nominee, that's them. I'm telling you, we're in an era in which the dumber the Democrat candidate is, the more likely they are to get support. It's a pretty remarkable thing to watch play out. The strong, independent, liberal woman collectively being triggered and falling apart because during a phone call with the men's hockey team, Donald Trump, in inviting them to the State of the Union, joked that, well, if I invite you, I got to invite the girls, otherwise I might get impeached. And of course, this triggered them because they have no sense of humor and are very weak. And they were just going apoplectic over it. It's just proof that sports is misogynistic and Donald Trump is misogynistic and men are misogynistic. Here is audio. It's actually about 2 minutes or so of Trump. And you're hearing into the call as he is on speakerphone talking to the men's hockey team after their gold win. And one of the other players starts filming the conversation.
And that team is pretty good you play. I don't know if you get it anytime soon. And I tell you what, I just told my people 2 minutes ago, I didn't know they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I can send a military plane or something. If you would like to, it's the coolest night. It's the biggest. We're in. Yeah. Can you pick us up in Miami on Tuesday morning? Tuesday morning. Go to the northern border. We'll get the cash and we'll get the military to get you guys over. Okay, let's go. Boys are going to the State of the Union. The nice thing about being president is I can tell you, you don't have to worry about the weather or land. So we don't care if it's the worst blizzard. We sell it to this sucker just like you did at the ice cream. Thank you, Mr. President. We'll do it at the White House anytime. It would really be cool. And we'll do the White House the next day. We'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. Okay? But anyway, if you could work that out, I would be honored to have you. I'll introduce you to the whole.
I got it, boss. I got it.
Okay, you got it, Cash.
I'm on it.
She's doing it. I'm happy. Congratulations. That was an unbelievable game. I don't know if one person that wasn't, everybody that called me said I'm watching the hockey game. I don't know if anybody that wasn't. And you're going to be proud of that game for 50 years as you grow older. I mean, it was amazing. So we love you guys. Congratulations. And I hope to see you, Cash, Tuesday night. And I want to shake hands. I'm going to shake hands with everybody, but I got to shake hands with that goalie.
We'll see you Tuesday night, Mr. President.
See you Tuesday night.
I'm driving the bus, boss. We're bringing.
So that was the call that Trump made there to the hockey team. It's just fun. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like joy and happy and joking around. And
so the liberals react to this.
Oh, just some of the let's see, what were some of the comments that about how it's misogynistic and because he was joking about well, I got to invite the girls too, otherwise I'll be impeached, and of course they all laughed. One posting, they should all be ashamed of themselves. The only reason any of them even exist is because a woman gave birth to them. Laughing at a joke, talking about the women's team being inferior when they won the same medias or medals and so I mean, just it's a typical liberal stuff. The strong liberal woman there. Now, the women's team, they declined an invite to the White House, and they said, well, a number of the players have, they said, like, one said academic, but then there was some other sort of pre-arranged engagement that they had to attend. Now, whether that's true or they couldn't have been postponed, I don't know. But here's what I do know. Those women on that team know the hell that would be unleashed on them from the left if they accepted that invitation.
That is so true.
They know the guys can kind of get away with it, but the left has really caged in what groups are and are not allowed to do. And when it comes to minorities and when it comes to women, there's a place for them, and you are not allowed to, be part of MAGA. You're not allowed to do this and that. And so they're fully aware of the hell that would unleash on them as women if they accepted that invitation. And it's sad. And I'm not saying that's the reason they haven't, that they're deciding not to go. I have no idea. But they're not ignorant to that fact because the whole world knows how the left treats women when they get out of line. Springfield's Talk 1041, news in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. You know, there are 10 commandments to follow. There's the traditional, but also a list of 10 things that you are to not do when you are purchasing a new home or looking to purchase a new home. This is some of the information that you get from the characters, their team. You can find it at iwantagreathomeloan.com. A lot of times you get that pre-approval letter and you think, okay, good, I'm clear. This is what I'm good for. This is what I'm approved for. And then you go out and you buy a new car. Now, some of you may think, well, I know better than that. Do you know also if, say, your grandma kicked it and left you $2,000 and you put that in your bank account, that could cause a disruption? Your instinct would be, why would that hurt? I have more money, not less. Why would that be problematic? Hey, listen, government rules and regulations. What are you going to do? A lot of it doesn't make sense, but that's why the characters and their team are there, guide you through all that stuff to help you not make these unforced errors that make things more difficult, things that don't make sense oftentimes. So when you're getting to the point, you're thinking about maybe taking out a home loan or maybe doing some refinancing, reverse mortgaging, it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. This is a great story regarding a local company, and one of the great things post-Trump 2.0 or Trump 2.0, the recognition by so many businesses in this country that the really loud lefties are not the majority. That was a misconception that a lot of people bought into, and it's understandable. Because of the Biden administration's censorship of the internet and the media being run almost wholly by people on the left, with the exception of some of the alternative outlets, it was real easy to just believe if you were some person that loved liberty and the Constitution in America, that you were an extremist and a minority. And that all of this woke stuff was happening because that's what a majority of people supported. And the election of Trump, the second time around, was a real wake-up call to everyone across the board. It's one of the reasons that a lot of these corporations have really backed off of all of this stuff. It wasn't necessarily that they were buying into it, but they thought it was good marketing because they had been gaslit into believing, like so many other Americans, that that's where a majority of people were. And so they wanted to be right there with the majority of people in America and market to those people. And so wokeness and DEI and transgender kids and all of that sort of stuff. And once the reality broke through by way of the last presidential election, you saw a lot of those companies go, oh, wait a minute here. Okay, we were misled. We had a misunderstanding of the landscape. And increasingly at the same time, you've seen a lot of companies that are just really standing up against the total and complete BS. There's a piece in the Gateway Pundit about one of those companies that it's kind of a nationally known company, but it's local at the same time. They wrote, as the world watches Team USA dominate on the ice in the 2026 Milan Cortina Games, the miserable blue checks at Huffington Post have decided that American excellence is actually a psychological trigger. While patriotic Americans were celebrating a hard-fought victory for the men's hockey team, the radical activists masquerading as journalists were busy telling their readers that feeling proud of your own country is a clinical disorder. In a now viral tweet that has ignited a firestorm of populist rage, Huffington Post vomited out this gem of a headline: if waving the American flag or chanting USA turns you off right now, you're not alone. The tweet linked to a Therapy Speak manifesto by Monica Torres titled, "There's a name for the discomfort you're feeling watching the Olympics right now," according to the Huffington Post experts. If you feel a tightening in your chest while watching the Stars and Stripes rise, it's not because you're a hater. It's because you have cognitive dissonance. The article goes on a deranged rant attempting to link Olympic gold medals to President Trump's deportation of illegal aliens and federal law enforcement actions. Torres writes that, quote, federal agents detain 5-year-olds and kill unarmed civilians while athletes win medals, creating a national shame. They even found a few disgruntled athletes to bolster their anti-American narrative. Skier Hunter Hess claimed that wearing the flag doesn't mean he represents the U.S. government. Meanwhile, the article quotes clinical social workers and psychologists who suggest that instead of chanting USA, you should join mutual aid campaigns and focus on humanity rather than the medal count. The message is clear: being a patriot is a mental illness, and loving your country is, quote, gross. The elites in the newsrooms of New York and D.C. thought they could shame the American public into silence. They were wrong. Jimmy's Famous Seafood, a family-owned staple of Baltimore since 1974, decided they had seen enough of the anti-American vitriol. Known for serving America's favorite crab cakes and shipping nationwide, the business didn't use therapy speak or nuance to respond to Huffington Post nonsense. They kept it simple, American, and legendary. Responding directly to the Huffington Post tweet, Jimmy's Famous Seafood wrote, quote, "Go F yourself." At the time of the writing of the article, the tweet had been viewed 6.2 million times, with thousands of Americans cheering on the small business for having the backbone to stand up to the woke mob. I noted at the very opening of the Olympics when some of the U.S. athletes were essentially put on the spot to give a loyalty oath against the United States. You know, the questions, what's it feel like representing a country that's just so horrible? And the fact that there are lots and lots of countries that have their fair share of problems, many of them when it comes to immigration issues. In fact, there really aren't many countries that are overall as lax or were as lax, or as the United States was during the Biden administration, as we were. I mean, the immigration standards in the vast majority of countries is much, much more strict than what they were under the Biden administration, and Trump has actually gotten us more in line with the other countries. Yet, no other athletes were asked to denounce their countries. No other country had their athletes put on the spot in order to give commentary as to the political situation in their country, particularly in a way to condemn it. It's only us that is somehow supposed to do that. And when you have these left-wingers in the media that write these pieces about how, you know, shameful it is to be proud of the United States and to celebrate our wins when bad things are going on in our country, do they think that other countries don't have bad things going on in their country? Why is it okay for them to celebrate, for them to feel proud of their country? These people are just haters. And the left has defined itself off hating everything that the political opposition is about. And because their political opposition is about patriotism and celebrating victories and feeling good about the country, they have to do the opposite. And that includes hating the country, hating victory, not celebrating our bright spots, but instead looking at everything negative. And just from a humanitarian standpoint, have you ever known of any individual or organization that approaches everything with such a negative perspective that has resulted in anything positive? You know, aside from policies, I think people who understand vision, who understand perspective, and who understand the difference between living with someone, having someone in your life that is positive, that isn't naive, but also recognizes the power on focusing on the positive and utilizing that in order to try and expand the positive experiences versus a person who has in their life someone that it doesn't matter what happens, they always want to focus on the negative. I mean, you're talking about the difference between misery versus living a life. And when you think about what it would do to and what it does to an entire country, when the people who want to run it and who have at certain periods run it, they are the negative ones. Where we can't celebrate victories. We have to instead apologize for our past sins. We can't ever have happy moments or highlight our achievements because, after all, we have a history of doing horrible things. Is it any wonder that the Democrat Party is populated with people who are so miserable? Look at the culture in it. Fortunately, you see these bright spots of people fighting back, and they're unapologetic, and they will not let the darkness dampen the brightness and the light of the positivity. We've got traffic coming up right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well, with a high near 62. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And for Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 62.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. I wanted to read a couple of reviews for the fine folks over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Laura wrote, I was very impressed with Josh. He was very quick to show up and look at our roof and assess the repairs that were needed. He will be our roofer when we replace the roof. Thank you, Josh. And Zach wrote, Josh was phenomenal. He inspected my roof and was honest with his opinion and gave great advice. Nothing was forced and no scare tactics were used, and he was very knowledgeable. Highly recommend. Now, let me tell you a little something about Josh because I've known him a little over 4 years now, and what Laura and Zach wrote is 100% true. Josh really does want to find the best solution for you and your home when it comes to your roof. And sometimes that doesn't mean a whole new roof, so he won't push you in that direction if it's not needed. If you are looking for someone upfront and honest, you definitely will get that with Josh over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. If it is time to have Josh out to your home, reach out today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
There is a congresswoman by the name of Maxine Dexter. I think she's from Oregon. Let's see if that's where she's from. Yes, she's from Oregon. She's a Democrat. And, you know, last week or the week prior, there was an event in the Oval Office in which it was Trump, some executive order, refocusing on whole foods as opposed to processed stuff, and part of that was whole milk as opposed to utilizing some milks that aren't as whole. And this Democrat congresswoman has claimed that drinking whole milk is, quote, white supremacy dog whistling. I mean, so now we've become accustomed to people on the left just being nuts. We played earlier an audio of a woman who's running for Congress in Michigan. She's a Democrat, and she posted on TikTok a video on the 10-year anniversary of her ex-boyfriend blocking her 10 years ago, ranting at him about how she is running for Congress out of spite just to show him that she can be something. She's also, Sarah pointed out, the same one who celebrated Charlie Kirk being murdered. And if that's a Democrat, if that's a state that, or that district she's in leans blue, she'll probably win. Drinking whole milk is a white supremacy. What isn't a white supremacy dog whistle any longer? So you realize the impossible situation the left creates. Like everything is a white supremacy. Everything's white supremacy. Math is white supremacy. Milk is white supremacy. Speaking in what people would consider to be an articulate English, they say is white supremacy. Some of the things that they come up with to label as white supremacy, even people who know that these are crazy individuals still would have a hard time predicting, like, that's white supremacy too? So one asks oneself then, well, what am I supposed to do then? What do I engage in that won't qualify as white supremacy? I guess something of the black culture. Well, you can't do that either because that's misappropriating someone else's culture. You can't wear hair that they say is the culture of the black community. You can't use certain words that the black community. So the left boxes you into this corner, at least if you are of certain races, to where everything is either white supremacist, which means you are racist, or your other options, well, you can't use those options because that's not your culture. See what I'm talking about when I say these people are just miserable human beings? And why it is that the Democrat Party is the place for miserable humans. I bet a lot of you, if you just really think about it, and if you know someone who is, I don't mean old school blue collar Democrat or even independent voter, but you know someone that they're just Democrat, they hate Trump. I bet if you think about it, that these are individuals that they may find sort of moments of levity, but really when it comes down to it, they're never happy about anything. They're just miserable people. And everything that happens, there's something negative about it. Everything is awful. Everything is horrible. They're just miserable people. Without misery, if people on the whole were overall just upbeat, positive individuals, the Democrat Party today could not exist. Because you'd have a vast majority of those involved that would walk away. Like, I don't need this. Doesn't mean that they'd necessarily run to the Republican Party. You're running around, and when you are so sad and angry and dark that the President of the United States encouraging people to drink whole milk, in your mind, that's white supremacy? You're nuts. You're crazy. And this is the thing that we fail oftentimes to recognize whenever we've got an upcoming election like the midterm elections. And so, all right, I think here's what a lot of people, they're like, yeah, Democrats are crazy. I think normal people think they're nuts. But the economy, like, well, I wish it were doing a little bit better. Maybe we'll go ahead and give them a chance. Think about the judgment of the people that you're thinking about giving the reins to. These are people who believe milk is white supremacy. These are people who think women and girls should be forced to shower with boys. These are girls who tell you they can't tell the difference between a man or a woman. These are individuals that are seriously flawed, to put it mildly, when it comes to using judgment. You really want those people with such poor judgment in charge of anything? That insanity isn't compartmentalized. Someone who is that far removed from reality and just the understanding of human nature, and they're that far removed that's not like just, oh, well, when it comes to this particular issue, but they're perfectly normal when it comes to evaluating the economy and social program. No, doesn't work that way. It's like, if you're an alcoholic, you're not an alcoholic, well, except for when it comes to beer and wine. You're an alcoholic. There's certain things that don't compartmentalize themselves, and being deranged as a person in your perspective of things does not, we've got to move away from recognizing that the derangement, thinking that somehow that derangement is not going to have an impact on their approach when it comes to dealing with the economy and education, because it does. I mean, they are crazy. And you think about the fact that they would run around and, just try to think of an example of something that a Republican has said or posted that may have been a little bit kooky, and they mock them for it. I'm like, what are you talking? Are you kidding? I mean, you have some of your mainstream Democrats that have the weirdest, craziest, most insane ideas imaginable. And they argue they should be in charge. And they have votes. Scary stuff. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Regarding this lunatic Democrat congresswoman claiming that whole milk is a dog whistle for white supremacy. Text message on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line. It's considered racist because a large percentage of Asians and African Americans are lactose intolerant. Well, the problem with that, if that is her perspective, is she's wrong, because that's not a whole milk, skim milk issue. Lactose that's a sugar thing versus a fat thing. And so she wasn't talking about milk. She was talking about specifically whole milk. And so, that isn't a lactose issue. I mean, you can have skim milk that's got lactose, unless, of course, you have it removed. So now, I'm not saying that isn't the belief of some people on the left. It would make sense, because that would be based off of incorrect understandings of science, which we find the left really does almost have a full monopoly on.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A red flag warning is in effect for the entire listening area until 7 p.m. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll be a breezy one as well, with a high near 62. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low near 40. For your Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 67. And taking a look at Thursday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 62.
So continues in Mexico, of course, to be the fallout of the taking out of El Mencho. And, one of the things that I've learned is that oftentimes what you see on TV is, you're seeing through like a straw, right? I'm always trying to be very aware of that when I watch any news from overseas. And you can understand why people who live in other countries think what they think about the United States, when all they, like you and I mean, can you imagine what they really think oftentimes of Trump and what's going on in this country? Because you and I are here, so we know what gets broadcast on the television is not a full representation of what's actually going on here. But if you live in other countries and that's what you see, it might as well be the entire country is that way. And what is going on in Mexico is similar in fashion, that you have this real fallout that is serious. There's no doubt about it. It has massive implications. But, I have family that is vacationing in Mexico and, the areas that they're in. I mean, they're driving around and along the coastline and visiting beaches, and they're not seeing a single thing. And obviously that's much, much different than what is occurring in other parts of the country. And you do have the United States sort of sending out this warning, basically like, don't go to Mexico. And that also gives the impression that what is occurring through Mexico is just all over. Like, there is no place to be in Mexico in which you are safe. And you understand why it is that our State Department issues sort of these broad nets of caution when it comes to travel, because better safe than sorry. And you don't know what you may know what's happening now, but you don't know what it's going to turn into tomorrow. And so it's just better to be safe than sorry. Apparently, the what led to his capture and killing was a rendezvous with a romantic partner, and they had been tracking this intelligence. We've acknowledged, and the Mexican government's acknowledged, that in terms of intelligence, this is intelligence that we provided to the Mexican authorities, and it all centered around El Mencho being captured because he had a secret rendezvous with a lover that we were tracking. And I think we were actually tracking the person who was giving the lover the ride to the rendezvous point, and that's how it was that we eventually were able to locate and to have that intelligence, because after the rendezvous was over, he stayed at that particular location long enough for that intelligence to be provided to whomever it was that would eventually, the Mexican military, go in and carry out the operation. At the same time, the New York Post is reporting that Trump has quietly been receiving 100-some cartel leaders from Mexico, including El Mencho's brother, before this raid, all as part of an effort by the United States to hold these people accountable for crimes committed in the United States. The Post reporting that Mexico has quietly shipped nearly 100 suspected cartel drug traffickers to the U.S. to stand trial, charges after President Trump branded the groups foreign terrorist organizations last year and pressured the Mexican government to cooperate. The suspects include the brother of El Mencho. The Justice Department said many of the 92 defendants released to the Americans had U.S. extradition requests that were not honored during the Biden administration. Attorney General Pam Bondi said, as President Trump has made clear, cartels are terrorist groups, and the Department of Justice is devoted to destroying cartels and transnational gangs. We will prosecute these criminals to the fullest extent of the law in honor of the brave law enforcement agents who have dedicated their careers and in some cases given their lives to protect innocent people from the scourge of violent cartels. The Mexican government elected to round up the dozens of wanted criminals after the Trump administration made clear it was taking these matters more seriously, according to the Department of Justice. This is another landmark achievement in the Trump administration's mission to destroy the cartels, Bondi said of the latest round of handovers announced last month. The alleged cartel members, including terrorists from the Sinaloa cartel, the CJNG, and others, will now pay for their crimes against the American people on American soil. The Trump administration's approach to dealing with drugs coming into the United States is a departure from what we have seen from previous presidents. And what is interesting is our reaction to it is such a sign of how comfortable we become with administration after administration saying that they'll take care of a problem, but they don't really do anything that's really, truly meaningful. It's very similar to the Middle East and energy independence, I'll use as an example. I grew up, like a lot of you, everyone who ever ran for president always talked about making us energy independent. Oh, we're going to be energy independent. And it never happened until Trump came along and he actually made it happen. Peace in the Middle East, well before my time. Oh, everyone's going to bring peace to the Middle East. Everyone's going to get these meaningful deals put together. Never happened. Trump makes it happen. As long as I've been alive, there's been a war on drugs in this country. And the approach has largely been telling Americans, don't do drugs. That was my era of growing up. Just say no. That combined with having, and this is something that really has developed more recently, rehabilitation. So using the government to set up facilities all over the country so that people who are already addicted to drugs can get into some sort of treatment program. That's been the approach. Just don't do the drugs, but if you do, we'll try and help you stop doing the drugs. Trump, in virtually everything he does, his approach is different than what we have seen in terms of a president of the United States. And his approach has clearly been, we just need to hit the source. And we have seen that with the blowing up of the drug boats. We have seen it with the declaration of these different drug traffickers being declared terrorist cells so that we can go after them in a more meaningful way. And what we're learning from the New York Post is that in the lead up to cutting off the head of the snake of one of these cartels, the fact that we have quietly had funneled to us almost 100 of these individuals into the United States that we've never had any interest in actually holding accountable before. And I know that some people disagree with Trump's approach, particularly when it comes to shooting the drug boats out of the water. I don't necessarily disagree with it. And I think it was a real moment of clarity when this first began occurring, the drug boats being blown out of the water. And there was a reporter that asked Donald Trump, why don't you just send the Coast Guard after them and arrest them? And Trump's response was, well, one, their boats are a lot faster, but two, that's what we've been doing all this time. It doesn't work. And that statement is such a defining difference between how it is that we are accustomed to doing things, almost what our expectations are in terms of doing things, versus how Trump does them. And it's such an obvious answer. Like, this is the way we've always done it. Why don't we just send the Coast Guard? That doesn't work. And what is a further reflection of just our collective approach culturally in this country is, instead of that being this real wake-up call, like, oh my gosh, well, that's a really good point, it was just glossed over, brushed over like it was a non-answer. And let's just go back to asking, well, why can't we arrest them? Well, why can't we just, stop the boats? And then we can get information from those individuals about who it is that's, getting them to, which, of course, we know the answer to those questions. Point being is that while, again, some people may disagree with that aggressive approach, they may disagree with the United States extraditing at this point almost 100 of these high-profile drug traffickers because of the real meaningful change of approach by the Trump administration versus all the previous administrations during the war on drugs. But the thing about it is it's different. It's different. And if you want a different result, you have to take a different approach. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a fully successful approach, but you think how much money we have spent, how many lives have been lost, whether it be the people that are taking the drugs, being dealt the drugs, or law enforcement whose job it is to stop the drugs from making it into this country or getting it off the streets. You think about just the years and years and decades of this. And we do it over and over and over again from administration to administration to administration, the exact same approach, generally speaking. I mean, maybe a tweak here or there. No different outcome. Just more money, spending more lives, almost like the war with Ukraine and Russia. You know, just keep spending, no changes, just doing the same thing over and over again. Just throw money at it. And I just think it's a great opportunity for us to recognize that sometimes we just do the same thing over and over again, regardless of the political affiliation of the person in the White House, when it comes to some of these massive problems, whether it's the Middle East or it's, dealing with China. I mean, you could go down the list, but specifically drugs coming across the border. And it's always been telling us, just say no, but we'll set up a rehab center for you in case you do say yes. And Trump's like, you know what? How about we just stop them from coming across the border? How about we blow the boats out of the water while they're on their way here? And we'll take those out, and also it'll kind of send a message to everyone else. You don't want to do this. How about we feed intel to the Mexican military so they can take out one of their top guys and at the same time have other drug cartel members funneled into the United States from the Mexican authorities so that we can put them in prison here? I can't help but believe it's going to make some difference. It seems very clear that the Mexican cartels are a little concerned that this is making a meaningful difference. But, just outside of the end result, this should be a lesson for us that, the recognition that too often we just do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting some sort of different result. And it costs a lot of money and a lot of lives. And it's not always the worst thing in the world to have somebody come along, particularly when we say we want change, to actually have them change the way we do things. Of everything that Donald Trump has brought to the Oval Office, I'd say there are two things that right now I would identify as the most important. One, the fact that he really truly loves this country and wants it to succeed. And two, he doesn't do things the way that they've always been done for the sake of always doing it. If it doesn't work, he tries a different way, no matter how unconventional it is. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, when it comes to your home or your business, comfort isn't one of those things that you want to take a gamble on. You want your HVAC to work when it's needed and a company that you can trust when something just doesn't feel right. And that is where Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air comes in. Now, they work on a wide range of heating and cooling systems, and they take care of both residential and commercial customers. So no matter what your setup looks like, they know how to handle it. If you want dependable service, if you want honest work, if you just want peace of mind year round, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air is definitely the go-to company. Now, if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home or to your business, reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Well, after years of denying it, the lying trash at JP Morgan Chase has now publicly admitted that it did close down President Donald Trump's bank accounts and other business accounts weeks after the January 6, 2021 protest at the Capitol building. The Associated Press reported that the company made the admission in a recent court filing related to Trump's $5 billion lawsuit against the company. The president alleges that the bank giant and CEO Jamie Dimon debanked him over politics. From NBC News until now, J.P. Morgan has never admitted it closed the president's accounts in writing after January 6th. The bank would only speak hypothetically about when the bank closes accounts and its reasons for closing accounts, citing bank privacy laws. A spokeswoman for the bank declined to comment beyond what the bank said in its legal filings. Trump originally sued J.P. Morgan in Florida State Court, where Trump's primary residence is now located. The filings this week are part of an effort by J.P. Morgan Chase to have the case both removed from state to federal court and to have the jurisdiction of the case moved to New York, which is where the bank accounts were located and where Trump kept much of his business operations until recently. Trump originally accused the bank of trade libel and violating state and federal unfair and deceptive trade practices. In the original suit, Trump said he tried to raise the issue personally with Dimon after the bank sent him notices that J.P. Morgan would close his accounts and that Dimon assured Trump that he would figure out what was happening. The lawsuit alleges Dimon failed to follow up with Trump. So finally, some admissions to what it was that everyone knew. And I firmly believe this is a large part of the reason that Trump does file a lot of these lawsuits. It isn't so much to actually have the day in court, but to have these filings made public, because then the offender has to turn over evidence that by itself oftentimes what Trump has been claiming to be true. And this is one of those cases.